So.
Yeah. Well, good morning. I'm going to reward all the people who are here promptly on time, and as the others come in, they'll have to have missed some of the less important introductory stuff, perhaps, but you're anxious to hear Janelle. So, in the style of the familiar to some of you PBS NewsHour, I'm Peg Van Grau. Lori Orlo is away. So if you know that introduction, there we go. We have our other Janelle here with us this morning, and I'm so glad to be able to get better acquainted with her myself. She's a new member who came in last year, courtesy of her uncle, Randy, and we're glad to have you both here this morning. She has been well established in her career as administrator and consultant, and that's what we're here to hear about this morning. Her consulting agency deals with belonging. She came from Chicago. She's going to tell us a little bit more about herself. She grew up in her church and came to Third Reformed, and her education focus is on special education. It became her background as an educational consultant, leading to the inclusion of individuals, not disabilities, but those who may be less abled than some of us. And I thought the sermon, and particularly the anthem that the choir sang this morning, was so appropriate for your topic. Her son Grayson has a heart condition, an autoimmune challenge, a smile, and a delightful laugh. Her other children are a middle schooler, Owen, and a late elementary student, Harper. Her husband, Jared, is a corrections officer for juvenile detention. And let us listen to Janelle and consider ways of belonging. Janelle, thank you.
On this earth to do, and not just from a professional standpoint, as a mom also, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But just want to be able to share a little bit of my heart with you. And my disclaimer is that I have a lot of things I want to say, and I'm going to try to keep us on a timely manner. So I do apologize. I'm going to hang out back here just a little bit more because my beautiful computer keeps me on track. So I am here, yes, this morning to talk a little bit about belonging, specifically thinking about the church and individuals with disabilities and individuals with varying abilities. As mentioned, I work for an organization, it's a nonprofit called All Belong, Center for Inclusive Education. We are just over 40 years old. We were started in Grand Rapids, formerly known as the Christian Learning Center, or CLC. And we are advocates for belonging and inclusion for students with disabilities in Christ-centered schools. So we focus on working with faith-based schools, and currently have over 100 schools that we work with in 3 different countries. So we are growing. We get calls almost every week, either from a parent of a child who has been told, my local faith-based school has said they cannot take my child, or from a school saying, we want better, we want to do better. So we work really hard to help equip them to do that. Our 3 kind of pillar foundations that we focus on is that we want individuals, students specifically, to be known, needed, and experience belonging in their Christ-centered school. And while much of my background is in education, specifically faith-based education, this applies to the church too. I think one of the things that got me started down this path was this realization that many Christian schools would say, I'm so sorry, we just can't, we're not equipped to handle your child. We're not equipped to take your child. We want to, sometimes it's a flat out no. And that just feels so wrong to me. If there's anywhere that a child with a disability should fit, it should be within the body of Christ of a Christ-centered school. And it also should be within the body of Christ in a church. So I will focus on the church piece this morning. At All Belong, we do have 3 fundamentals. We believe we're incomplete without everyone. Therefore, we strive to know students excellently and commit to being collaborative, innovative builders of belonging. So this is what I spend all my time doing. And it's delightful. It's challenging. It's encouraging. It's every feeling you could possibly describe comes from the work that I get to do. So we're going to start with a quiz. True teacher fashion here. No worries, it'll be okay. So what we're gonna do, what I will used to do with my students, thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up means true, thumbs up means false. So we're just gonna throw some things out there and I'm gonna ask you questions. True or false? About 10% of persons in the United States have some sort of disability. What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? False. It's actually 20 to 25%. According to the CDC and census results vary a little bit, but anywhere from 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 individuals have some sort of a disability. True or false? A family that tried to bring their 3-year-old son with autism to Sunday school at a local church was told to never bring him back again because we cannot handle him here. The family took turns attending church for the next 4 years while one of the parents stayed home with their son. True. This is sadly a common situation for adults and children with disabilities and their families. True or false? The best way to support people with disabilities in church is to build a separate program and hire experts to run that program. Oh, this feels like a trick question, doesn't it? False. We can consider alternate and more effective ways to envision supports and options for people with variabilities that are based on belonging for all. True or false? The reason that most churches give for excluding a person with a disability is that they do not see a clear scriptural reason for including that person. True or false? Oh, you guys are good. False. They know the why, they just don't know how. True or false? This is our last true. This is the last of the quiz. You guys are doing fantastic. I am not trained in any of these areas and therefore do not have a role in making this type of initiative successful in my congregation. Phil, that was an emphatic thumbs down. I appreciate that. False. We all have a part to play in belonging. What I want to do next is introduce you to something called the puzzle piece perspective. This is at the core of much of what I do. And really, I think at the core of when we think about disability ministry, whatever word you want to use to describe that, this is a core piece that I think is foundational. So we're going to watch a short video. I have a few videos embedded in our time together today. And the person that is speaking in this video, her name is Barbara J. Newman. Barb actually was from Holland. I worked for 15 years with her at Zeeland Christian. Barb, sadly, has gone home to be with Jesus far sooner than any of us wanted her to go. And at the same time, Barb's legacy is in so many places. So I always say that before I show this video, because if someone has known Barb and then they hear her talking, it can be a little hard to process at first. So I want you to listen to Barb explain the puzzle piece perspective.
Today, when Psalm 139 says that God knit us together, I suspect God used green and pink yarn to do that knitting process. Green for those areas that are really easy for us. Those are our strengths, they are our gifts. And pink, well, what shall we say, for our hot spots, the things that are more difficult for us. And would you agree that everybody gathered here today could wear this like our name tag, with our name in the middle, and we could fill it in, things that are easy, our strengths, pink's challenges. It's a complex knitting pattern that God uses for each one of us. We can be green and pink in so many different areas, but the truth is, that's all of us. And while I probably would have rather ended in my green and pink puzzle piece and exchanged it for a green one that's all together green, anybody here want to trade that in for something like that? You know what I would say? Beautifully in knit by God. Each one of us, fearfully and wonderfully. But I'm going to tell you some lessons that I learned from puzzles. Because I think this is important. Have you ever noticed that many times a person with a disability is viewed as an all-pink person? Oh, it's Down syndrome, Jonathan, cerebral palsy, suicidal, or frank, it's dementia, Andrew. And it's like that defines the entire person. You know what? That is not a biblical view. Scripture is very clear that God has given everyone gifts to bring to the body to build it up. Every part is important. So we know from the beginning that there are no all people. And once you sit in a place where you feel some pressure to be an all-brainy person, let me just tell you that's not biblical. That is not how we are intended to live. And in fact, this is one of my favorite verses for Christmas as well. Husbands, stay together. Places where I'm strong, I can come along with somebody else. Places where they're strong, they can come alongside me. We fit together like a puzzle in the body of Christ. Do we not? And what a beautiful verse that illustrates it in 1 Corinthians 12:18. But in fact, God has arranged or placed the parts of the body, each one of them, just as he wanted to be. So not only did God take time to hand each one of us here, but then God places us into communities so that we can use our gifts to grow that place. We might not have all the answers, but we want to have the same hopes that Jesus Christ had for each one of us. You are welcome here. There's a place of belonging.
I want to introduce you to my puzzle piece. As Barb so well explained, we all have pinks, we all have greens. Some of my greens, I'm a pretty good listener. I can be patient most of the time. I'm curious. I like using words to talk about things, think about things, explain things. I like to simplify things. I like to take really complicated ideas and make them as simple as possible. I also feel like I'm a pretty joyful person. And I'm pretty determined. And I'm going to just go off script and credit my dear grandma, Bernice, who also is determined. Determination runs in our family. So I like to say thank you to her for that. Some of my pinks, memory can be very tricky. My children literally have a mom list at home. Things for mom. And if they tell me something, I just say, put it on the list because I will not remember it 5 minutes from now. Playing sports is not a sweet spot for me. Maybe, thankfully, I have children who also are not super. Maybe that's why. Understanding a lot of information at once, especially if it's coming at me just auditorily. I need time to think about it. I need to see it. That's a way that I understand. Juggling a lot of details at the same time ties in with the memory piece, perhaps. So that's a picture of who I am. You might be looking at that list and thinking, oh, some of her pinks are my greens. Some of her greens are my pinks. Well, I'm glad that you're thinking about that because I want to take just a few minutes and I want you to think about what are some of your greens? What are some of your strengths, areas of passion, things you enjoy doing? What are some of your hot spots or pinks? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think about that. And then I want you to talk to the person next to you to share maybe one pink, one green, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. So, all right, start thinking. This is the teacher quiet time. All right, turn and talk to a person near you if you're comfortable sharing a pink or a green or some of both. All right, if you haven't already switched and let the other partners speak, please switch. Challenge it. Hot spots would be areas of challenge, something that's difficult for you. Mhm. I just said the hot spots are things that are maybe challenging for you or difficult for you. Yeah. 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 All right. Share your last thought. And I will say, I do this with teachers all the time, and you are a delightful group of engaged teachers and students. So I want to move forward and share a little bit of the puzzle piece perspective within a church. So I'm going to share a little bit about the Winstrom family. This is a family that I did know personally. Their son Adam was born. He was their only child and was born, and as time went on, was diagnosed with both Down syndrome and autism. Adam was a delightful child and had some pretty challenging behaviors. So they had a rough road with Adam. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about their family. In his book, I Choose Adam, Nothing Special Please, Dr. David Winstrom reflects on his family's path on the way to finding a congregation that understood the puzzle piece perspective. While the Winstroms were ultimately able to settle into a Christian or congregation, they initially found a Jewish temple that seemed to understand well who Adam was and how this baby with Down syndrome would be an important part of the community. This is now Dr. Winstrom speaking. Jetta, Adam, and I only went a few times, but the rabbi was right when he said, sit or walk during service, but just come and be a part of community. Sometimes we would take Adam to church with us, and we would never hold him through the whole service because someone would always ask if they could please hold him. A community was affirming Adam. A community was wanting him to belong. A community was welcoming us, and it was not a program or technique. It was a fundamental knowing that all belong and all are welcome. Bearing that in mind, I want to just kind of give us a little orientation to thinking and talking about disabilities. So there are many different definitions of what a disability is, and within the world of disabilities, the definition sometimes changes, depends on the organization or what services or supports someone might be trying to access. One definition is any condition of the body or mind that makes it more difficult for the person with that condition to do certain activities and or interact with the world around them. There are four main categories that define disabilities: behavioral or emotional, sensory disorders, physical impairments, and developmental disabilities. Perhaps someone is coming to mind right now as you read that definition. Perhaps it's you. I think one thing I've learned is that the definition of disability is very wide. And really, it comes down to an identified reason for challenges someone might be having, doing the things they want to be able to do. I'm not going to read all of this. This is a lot of information. But what I want to share here is that Elam Christian Services is an organization in the Chicago area, and there is a person there who has really sort of identified 5 different attitudes towards individuals with disabilities. And we're starting all the way over on your left. Stage 1 is ignorance. Someone might say weaknesses and disabilities are a sign that God either does not care or is not able to fix the situation. Maybe a result of sin, lack of faith, God is not involved. That's one stage of disability, of perspectives towards disability. What changes that perspective is on the bottom, awareness. Then we move to pity. I feel sorry for people with disabilities. It's too bad, really. I'm blessed by God and I can help others. I'm grateful my own children are not disabled. People with weaknesses and disabilities obviously need someone like me to help them and give them meaning due to their troubles. Thank you, Robin. I really don't see any meaning or purpose to their lives. When we introduce access, proximity, relationship, now we move to care. Like me, people with disabilities were created in God's image. By that virtue alone, I know they have value. I hope that someone will take the time to show them God's love, and I'll happily support such an effort. In fact, I think we need to find ways to help those people. Maybe we should start a special church education class or respite care for the sake of parents. And I want to stop here and say, this is not a wrong or a bad perspective, right? A teacher I used to work with would say, it's okay to be where you are. It's not okay to stay there, right? So now we introduce integration. Individuals with disabilities are in more interaction and proximity with people who might have these different attitudes. Now we have friendship. I've come to know and spend time with a friend who has a disability. This person has value in God's sight, but also in mine. And I know that my life is better having known that person. As much as I've helped them, they've helped and blessed me. In fact, I now like to initiate relationships with people who have disabilities. God brings different people into my community, and we all benefit as we grow together. I will say stage 4 is where I was for a long time. I think it's where a lot of us are. Some of us stay there for a long time. Moving to stage 5 can be challenging. It stretches us, it challenges us, it stretches individuals with disabilities, it challenges individuals with disabilities. But when we have true engagement, we have the perspective of being co-laborers. And the mindset behind this is that if God has called each of us to serve and praise him with every fiber of our being, he's done the same for our brothers and sisters in Christ with disabilities. I think ministry should not just be to people with disabilities, but with or alongside people who have disabilities. You can see the difference as we move along, right? And I know this is something that is challenging to think through. But what I would love for us here at Third is to both think about what are we doing well, where are we at, what could we do better, what could we do differently, and what, maybe just for a second, and I won't ask you to share this, maybe thinking about where you might identify yourself on this progression. The next thing I want to share with you is something that is really important, I do think, and it's something that we can all do. It's something called person-first language. There's a lot of text up there that's really small, so I'm going to give you the highlights of this. The idea behind person-first language is that when we're talking about someone with a disability, we say the person first. A person with Down syndrome, a person with autism, a person who uses a wheelchair to get around, Luke, who uses a communication device to share with his friends, Manushka, who uses a scooter when she has to walk long distances. Opposite of that, some examples of what we want to avoid would be autistic students like Aaron, Jeremy, who has Down syndrome, a Down syndrome student, typically abled. Those are some of the things we want to avoid. So it gets messy. We mess it up. I mess it up. Just full disclosure, right? But if in general, the mindset is that when we're talking about individuals with disabilities, we start with a person first. We see them as a person made in God's image. And then maybe there are some things we use to describe them regarding their disability. You have mentioned my daughter, Harper. Harper's in 4th grade at Zeeland Christian School. Harper's best friend is Luke. And Luke is a delightful kid. He loves Slinkies. He loves to play pranks on people. He's really actually quite naughty. He uses a wheelchair to get around. He also uses a feeding tube for his eating needs. He uses a communication device to communicate with individuals. Harper and Luke have the most beautiful friendship, and I wish I could share that with you. I get videos from school all the time of the shenanigans that the two of them get into. Most of the time it's Harper starting it. And Luke is a very willing participant. But Harper doesn't see all of those descriptors I gave of Luke. It's Luke. Luke is her friend. When it was her birthday and she got to bring in her birthday treat for school, she brought different stickers in for everyone, and she was kind of sorting out who was going to get one. And the first thing she said is, okay, I think I need to give the hippopotamus to Luke because Luke loves elephants. Luke has never said he loves elephants. Harper just knows Luke. She knows him. She loves him. The two of them are inseparable. And it's beautiful. And so Harper is growing up with her best friend, Luke. Yeah, there are some things that are hard for him. She would say there are some things that are hard for me too. She actually said, so All Belong did a feature video on Zealand Christian, and Harper and this group of friends were featured in it. And in the recording, Harper actually said to the people recording, actually, Luke makes sure I belong, not the other way around. And it's true. Luke is the best friend Harper could ever imagine, despite the fact they've never actually said words to each other. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time because we just talked about this a second ago when I was reading through the perspectives. But we want to think about changing our prepositions. Instead of ministry to individuals with disabilities, we want to have ministry with individuals with disabilities. Instead of for individuals with disabilities, we want to have ministry with or alongside individuals with disabilities. So this is what I want to spend most of our time thinking about, is this shift from inclusion to belonging. There's a difference. Inclusion, when I hear the word inclusion, I think being welcomed in. There are good things that I tie to inclusion, being allowed into a space, proximity, all of these things. But inclusion is different than belonging. Belonging is reciprocal. Inclusion is a little bit more one way. Inclusion is a little bit of more of a perspective of, I've got some greens, I see your pinks, you need me to bring my greens to you so that you can be a part of this. Belonging is saying, we all have greens, we all have pinks. I see your greens, I see your pinks too. Where could we use your greens? Where could you use your greens to bless the broader community? So those are different things. We are going to try to move quickly through this. And again, I know this is a lot of information, so I'm happy to talk about this anytime anyone wants to. So I'm going to just skim the surface here. Dr. Eric Carter, who is a researcher, when he did this research, he was at Vanderbilt University. He interviewed over 500 individuals with disabilities and their families in an effort to define belonging. Out of his research came the 10 dimensions of belonging. How do you know belonging is felt? This is the question he asked. How do you know if belonging is felt among all members of your community? So we're going to move through these, and this is where I am going to stay here, so I stay on track here. The first dimension of belonging is present. Every person is present and has a presence in all aspects of the community. True presence is not just sharing the same place or space, it's having a presence. When someone has a presence, you miss them when they're not there. You ache when they're absent. Invited. Each person is issued a personal, intentional invitation. This is a personal invitation that is sought out. The person is pursued. They're intentionally invited. Think about the difference here between just joining a group that you see happening and being invited into the group. Those are two different things. Welcomed. Each person is greeted, noticed, and asked to join in activities and conversations. Here's the great thing about this. You don't need training. You don't need special training to do this. Ordinary gestures work just fine. A smile, a wave, a high five, a handshake. Each person determines what is welcoming to them, and that is important. So as you can imagine, you would need to know the person to know what feels welcoming to them. A handshake to one person may be completely overwhelming to another person. Known. Each person is truly known by their strengths, interests, likes, and dislikes. It's not known, but truly known. Not known by their label, their disability, or their struggles, but they're known by name, their strengths, their interests, their likes, their dislikes. Accepted. Each person is valued and embraced for being exactly who they are and all of their utter uniquenesses. Fitting in is different. It means changing who you are, who God has created you to be, to go with the norm and fit in with the broader group. Belonging means as you are. Supported. Each person is individually supported in innovative ways. By asking good questions and practicing good listening and deep listening, we can understand more about this. When we take time to know someone excellently, to know their strengths, their challenges, their likes, their dislikes, then we can really understand what they need to be supported. One of the best ways is to ask. cared for. Each person has their needs responded to in meaningful ways. This includes spiritual, practical, emotional, physical needs that they might have. How people are cared for allows them to flourish. Befriended. Each person is enjoyed and missed when they're gone. We know that we're all made for relationship, to be known, accepted for who we are, loved, and missed when we're gone. This circle is an interesting graphic, and speaking as the parent of a child with multiple disabilities, it is spot on. So if you start in the center, we have family, we have parents, grandparents, siblings, cousins. We all actually have these circles, right? If you think of your own life, you could fill in these circles. The next circle out, friends and close companions. Perhaps you can think of a few people who might fit into that category for you. Acquaintances would be classmates, employers, teammates. And on the outside are people paid to be there. Teachers, therapists, doctors, bus drivers, social workers, respite workers. What we have found over and over again is for individuals with disabilities and their families, actually, that green circle is painfully empty. They may have family who care them, love about them, or love them, do all manner of things with them. They're not going anywhere. They also have acquaintances. They might be in class with someone. They might be at church with someone. And then the outside is usually quite full. There are a lot of people paid to be there. If you ask some kids with different disabilities who their friends are, they actually might start lifting off some of those adults. Right? And there's something good about that. But at the same time, there's a difference between Harper and Luke being friends and Luke and his paraeducator in that interaction. So friendship is different. There's a difference between those two pieces. Needed. Each person brings gifts to the community that are seen as indispensable. They're needed as part of a thriving community. When we know each other from that strengths-based perspective, we know that each person is indispensable. Loved. Each person is deeply and unconditionally loved. And they feel that they are as valuable and worthy as anyone else, and they're loved by those around you. So that is a very fast spin around the wheel, or a very fast spin around the wheel of belonging. You can see when all of those pieces go together, the difference between inclusion, which really means proximity, and true belonging when all of these components are in place. I want to share with you something that a parent of an individual with a disability said to me regarding their church. This child has pretty significant behavioral challenges, being sensory challenges. Church is tricky for them. Noise is tricky for them. Unpredictability is tricky for them. Their behavior communicates in ways that tell us that they get overwhelmed easily. They had a really rough time at a church event, and it's hard. It's very visible, right? I'll talk about my own experience with that in a little bit. But what they said to me is, I know we belong here. I know he belongs here. I just don't know where. So those are things we can think of. What does it mean to belong? How can we pick even a few of those pieces and think of someone, and how can we increase their experience of belonging? I want to share with you a video, and we're doing great on time, so this is perfect. This is a video that All Belong did not too long ago. Oh, well, I guess it was a little bit ago, called Worship as One, Disability and Community. And we will watch at least part of this video. I don't know that we'll do all of it, but I want to share it with you because it gives you some pictures to imagine, like, what does this actually look like? So we will watch some of this together if technology cooperates with us.
When the first home of people with disabilities started coming to connections, they would come in, worship with us, and then very quickly, I was just determined that I was going to thank them for being here. And so I made it out there this time, and they stopped and rolled down the window. And I said, I just want to thank you for being here. This is awesome. And the driver started crying. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, well, Pastor George, she said, we're used to either being asked to leave or told not to come back. And she said, I was just expecting you to tell us I'll come back. When I was in my other church, I know that we marginalize people. I mean, if somebody came in and didn't behave themselves, we asked them to leave. You know, please be quiet. And we don't do things that way here. And so that's a part of the ministry. The application. And when you think about that, you're not necessarily thinking about how do you structure care for the family that has to walk through this.
At first glance, though, that it's someone who you can define really easily based on his autism. Take a one. He's a kid that doesn't hang out as a friend the way you and I would. You shake hands? That's what makes him stand out at first. But then when you get to know him for know them, you start to see a lot of beauty inside him. You start to see a kid who loves everybody, despite how they react to him. You start to see a kid who sticks up for his twin sister in his own ways.
Music is kind of always captures interest.
It's his thing. He struggles in the church setting. He struggles sometimes with the body because he struggles. But what you'll also see is his sign of joy, which a lot of times comes out in flapping. And that flapping happens when the church starts singing. It's like worship comes alive for him. Yes, in the main church.
With Nolan, it was hard.
Hey, you're right. First time.
Being confined to a chair and standing and sitting doesn't always work well for him.
Doesn't process for him.
No.
All the sounds going on. He processes everything 10 times more than the rest of us. And it gets overwhelming and he loses it and he melts down. Nolan is a full-time job. And we'd have to explain to his twin sister, our daughter Catherine, for the autism, he can't sit still here, so they're gonna duck out and go to a room for a while. The next thing you know, you have another loud kid. And so a lot of times we find our whole family sitting in that back room.
I think it got to the point where sitting in church as a family became more about the stress of keeping him contained than it was about actual worship.
And we get in the car on the ride home and kind of look at each other and go, why did we come to church?
Thank you very much. I attended the Calvary Symposium on Worship, and I was very convicted after being there. Barb and then talked about these puzzle pieces. On one side of the piece would be maybe your problem areas or your weaknesses. And I think for people with varying abilities, sometimes they'll stick out like a sore thumb. However, they have strengths too. Taking those pieces and putting them together as a congregation, that's the body of Christ working together. And so I was convicted to just start thinking about what are little things that I can do even right now to start including people. And I felt such an urgency about it because I felt like they're really important. I have a man who is seeing impaired And he mentioned to me that he would like to play on the worship team. He figured probably that's like a long shot, like, it's really not gonna work well, but I said, you know what, let's try it, there's no reason we can't try it.
Legally blind, but that means something different for a whole lot of different people. I can't see you, but I can see light if it's bright enough. Hey Julie, if you really want to be inclusive, you'll give me one of these tuners. Julie is probably gets set up here. It's just a regular monitor that turns sideways. And also I have a foot pedal to move the music along.
This is we just heard we can know now that he's been playing on the worship team. I will not get to the time to switch all music over, and I know that there's a piece of him that wants to just say, this is just too much for people, I will just bow out and let it be. But as a worship team, we've all really just come around him and made him know that he's worth being here. And he has an amazing heart for worship, and to be able to just see that, be able to come alive in him, it's just really a beautiful thing, of just seeing how that so beautiful. The other night I heard him say it was leaving, it was just so great, because I feel like I'm finally doing something normal again.
It's not just sitting in worship. How does he fit into a mold that isn't maybe the most accommodating for him nowadays? We met with our pastors and with our women, and kind of said, look, here's where we struggle. What should we do? And I remember one key question Mark asked our pastors was, what do you know about Nolan? And their response was, he was your son. He has autism. There wasn't a whole lot, and that's not to discredit them in any way. But I think they as pastors, first off, we have to educate them to who our child is before we can even go to the congregation and say, we need help.
That conversation was really the first time I had a clear sense of how deep a struggle this was for just being part of the church. There was just something on my heart that said, this is not that. We're going to do what we have to do to care for each other. And that's what
I think we just don't think from other people's perspectives sometimes, what is it that could be implemented in maybe a very seemingly simple way, so that all people can have the same experience where they're able to engage God with everything that they have.
we created a team of volunteers who, on a rotating system, could help attending more with Nolan on Sundays. And it was amazing to see the number of individuals, the kind of individuals that came forward and said, I'd love to do this.
He's in on Sunday, has windows into the sanctuary. It's got sound baked in, so you can hear what the songs sound like. Team Nolan members can turn the sound down if it's too loud, but he also is in a place where he can walk around. So he has that full understanding of what church worship looks like. That changed Nolan's world in church, I think.
So these are the worship couches and all sorts of things, just so that you can twiddle with something. It's not bothering people next to you, and it can help you pay more attention. And it just meets some of the other needs in the congregation as well, mine included. One of the other changes that we've been trying to implement at our church is simply what the pastors say, please rise in body and spirit. There is legitimate reason that some people cannot stand this entire time, but everyone can rise in spirit. It includes everyone.
There are times when we all need that same kind of help and understanding at some point in our life. And so when we worship together, when we sing together, it brings it home.
I just see that folks with disabilities have just made our community richer. We have kids that play guitars, that now that they have abilities, it's given them the courage to get in front of a microphone and have a bit of a voice. And they might not have been challenged and might not have had courage to do that if it wasn't for Julian, who wanted to come up and sing. I think that a good beginning point
You just simply start talking with people. Don't start with the needs, start with the strengths. Find out what people are good at, find out what people like to do, and then open a conversation for other things.
Ask the families to help you. Ask them to help you understand. And then be prepared as a leadership group to think creatively.
We didn't have answers that day at the table. We're figuring out life with Nolan every day, but it opened up the door to talk about Nolan as a whole. He is probably one of the most judged people on a daily basis, and yet he's probably the one who loves the most unconditionally of everybody around him.
God has a plan for us meeting each other. And how that comes out in people of varying abilities, in all people, really. When I can use my strength to help somebody with a weakness, they're able to turn and say, I can help you out there. That's the body of Christ working together. And that's just something that I think just really makes God smile.
So I want to share a little bit of our story of belonging at Third Reformed Church. This is my family, my husband, Jared, my oldest son, Owen, Harper is my daughter, and Grayson is in the middle with that smile that Peg mentioned earlier. And I want to tell you just a little bit about who we are, who Grayson is. We've been around Third Reformed for, about a year and a half-ish, give or take. Before that, I've been a part of a church for about 12 years. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that very handsome, dapper man on the screen. Grayson is 6 years old. He joined our family through adoption at birth. I got to be there when he was born. Our older two children are biological, so that was a new experience for us. And Grayson, before he was born, when his birth mom had her ultrasound done, they discovered that he had a really, really complicated congenital heart defect. The name of it is hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which means he does not have half of his heart. The left half of his heart is missing. It did not form. There's no one knows why this happens. It's one of the rarest congenital heart defects. But they knew about that. And so 30 years ago, kids who were born with that condition did not live. They lived a matter of hours and then they died because there was nothing they could do. Your body can't function in that manner. But since then, there's been a lot of research, a lot of development in cardiac care to the point that there is a plan to help kids hopefully survive that condition. So we knew when Grayson was born that he was going to need to have 3 open heart surgeries, that he would have. There were a lot of unknowns. We didn't know cognitively what he would be capable of. We didn't know physically what he would be able to do. Quite frankly, the priority for the first 2 years of his life was just keeping him alive. So Grayson, if you see him running around, you would maybe never guess that all of that was going on underneath his clothes. But I looked last night, and for my sweet son, at last count, he has approximately 27 different diagnoses of medical, developmental. He uses a feeding tube to eat most of the time. He sleeps with oxygen on. He's got pulmonary complications. He is one unique little fella. And at the same time, he is one of the brightest parts of my entire life. So I want to talk to you. I'm going to show you a few pictures of Grayson's journey thus far. I will warn you, this next one is hard to look at. This is Grayson. The top one is his first open heart surgery at 4 days old. He came out of the operating room. His chest was, I can't look at my family. His chest was still open for 2 weeks. He was on a breathing tube for a long time, but he survived. And it was a 50% chance that that would happen, but we got to keep him. Second surgery was when he was 4 months old. And the prognosis for that surgery, if kids make it past the first one to the second one, much better. He was in the hospital for about a month at that point, but made it. And then this one on the bottom is when he was I think 3 years old. He had his final planned surgery. So we're gonna move past those pictures. Those are hard to look at. Grayson has had to work hard at pretty much everything he has done in life. He has had feeding tubes, he's had oxygen, we've done immense amounts of therapy with him to get him sitting and then walking and then all of the things that my older two kids just did. I didn't even think twice about it. Grayson, on the left, that is a stander that he was in for a very long time to even learn how to bear weight on his legs. So that was Halloween. He was a giraffe and was literally trucking down our sidewalk in that. On the other side is an intensive feeding clinic that we went to for 8 weeks. We drove to Grand Rapids every day and spent 8 hours in the clinic. And they did intensive feeding therapy with him to get him transitioned from only being able to use his feeding tube safely to being able to eat food orally. So you can imagine the amount of work that this kid has put into just doing life. So this is Grayson's puzzle piece. His greens. This child remembers things like you would not believe to a detailed point. And I am in trouble as his mother because of this. He's creative. He draws pictures and can tell stories. And our nanny is a creative graphic designer, excuse me. And she always says, he is one of the most creative 6-year-olds I have ever seen in my entire life. He's funny. He loves to tell jokes. He thinks they're hilarious. His language is advanced. I credit my oldest son mostly for this because he has a high vocabulary. He talks to Grayson a lot. So Grayson says things like actually and realistically. His kindergarten class thinks it's hysterical. He's imaginative. He has so much joy. He is also very persistent. He just is following in the family beautifully. He has a lot of physical challenges. Sleeping, eating, stamina are all hard for him. He's sick a lot. He is in kindergarten full time. And last year in Young Fives, I honestly think maybe 5 days all year that he didn't have some physical symptom of illness. So he just deals with a lot on a daily basis. Because of everything he's been through, he has diagnosed anxiety and PTSD. Not only because of the trauma of adoption. We have a beautiful adoption relationship. We see his birth parents or his birth mom and part of his birth dad's family regularly. It's still, adoption starts with trauma. There was a separation that happened. So that separation on top of all the medical pieces, the number of times I've had to carry him into an operating room and leave him there, right? When mom leaves him, scary and painful things have happened. So he knows this. This is his reality. Separation from mom is a real hot spot for him. So you all have seen me trucking back and forth between the front and the back and then out and then in. He just needs to be with me if he's going to be able to even have a chance at staying regulated. He has some sensory and behavior challenges because of all of that. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So before we were here, the church that we were at was quite large. They were incredibly supportive when Grayson was born, walked alongside with our family and all of that. As Grayson got older, when COVID hit, we had to be in complete isolation for almost 2 years because he could not get it. He could not be exposed to it. We had pulled our older kids from school. It would have been very bad if he had gotten it. So we didn't go to church for 2 years. We did online church. And when we attempted to go back to church, it was a large church, lots of people. It was loud. They had children's ministry, which was great, but that required separating from mom if we were going to actually be able to utilize it. Well, you heard his pink spots. Loud, lots of people, leaving mom. We couldn't even get him in the doors of the church, quite frankly. So for a good period of time, I would take the older 2 kids to church and Grayson would just stay home because we just couldn't do that for him. And then some things changed for us. My uncle moved up from Chicago, started attending Third and had said to us, you should come check out Third. And so our first visit came, and I mean, you have to bear in mind, I'm bringing a kid who I literally haven't gotten in the doors of a church in 2 years, thinking I have no idea how this is going to go. And he just walked right in the doors. It was one of the most miraculous moments I will ever remember. And I am high anxiety because I'm like, okay, this is going to go one of 5 different ways. And he just went right in. And I think part of it was he knew Uncle Randy was here. Part of it was he sensed the presence of calmness and just being in this place. And so we went in, came in, sat down, did all the things. And then the coloring table was mentioned. And he was like, what? What is this amazing thing? Creative, artistic, right? And the fact that we were not only welcomed, but encouraged to come up to the front of the church during the sermon and sit and color and do whatever. I will never forget that Sunday. He was relaxed and calm in a way I've not seen in that kid in a long time, especially in a church setting. He sensed he belonged. It wasn't just tolerance, like we've got this place you can go if things aren't working. It was come up and be in front of us, be with us. We've thought through this. We've put coloring pages on the table. We've done all these things. We want you to be here. And I think even in his 6-year-old little mind, he could sense that. So we knew very quickly this was where we needed to be, not just for him, but for our whole family. For my older 2 kids, there are some real challenges. There are some real joys with Grayson being their brother, and there are some real challenges with Grayson being their brother for them. That leads to a Sunday I'll never forget. So we were here on a Sunday, and I don't remember the exact sequence of events. You know, probably we usually sit with my uncle, and then my older 2 stay with him, and I have some flexibility with Grayson. Well, Uncle Randy wasn't here that Sunday, so I'm here by myself with the kids. And Grayson was in a season of time where he was just really struggling emotionally and had things he maybe wanted to do and things he didn't want to do. And he let us know very clearly what those were. And with Grayson, there's a dance of picking my battles, right? So we're sitting in church and he didn't want to go to the coloring table at that time for whatever reason. And the kids and I are all sitting in church and we're sitting in the pew and it's the middle of the sermon. And I've pulled out my bag of tricks. I have a backpack. It's my go bag of all the things I bring to church for Grayson to keep him occupied. And he just really didn't want any of them. And that's where he was that day. So we're in the middle of the sermon and he's starting to talk. And he starts out quiet. This is how it goes with Grayson. He starts out quiet and I can sort of redirect him sometimes. And then he gets a little louder. And I can see he's starting to become what we call dysregulated, right? And so at that point, you choose your battles. And I'm not going to just say, be quiet, because he's just going to lose it, right? Well, that's hard for brother and sister to not be embarrassed by their little brother who's talking audibly in the middle of the sermon. You all know how quiet it is in there, right? So I got to the point that I was like, okay, we're going to need to go out. So I was like, okay, we're going to go out. And if I can get him in time, he will willingly go by distraction. Well, that was not a day I got him in time because I said, okay, we're going to go out. Let's go find something to do. We'll go in the other room. I don't want to go. Okay. Quickly escalated to screaming. I don't want to go out. I'm staying in here. You're hurting me. You're hurting me. As I'm carrying him out of church in the middle of the sermon, and it's crickets, right? Leaving my older 2 kids to sit in the pew by themselves. So we got out. I am just like, this is too much, right? Like, and I never, and I want to say very clearly, never once did I feel like, way to get your kid under control from anyone. That has never been a feeling I have had here by any stretch of the imagination. But it's embarrassing. Your child is screaming, don't hurt me, you're hurting me. So anyways, we get out. After the service, I go back to get my other kids. And Harper says to me, Mom, I was so embarrassed. Why can't he be quiet? You know, all the things. And she said, when it was time for passing of the peace, so many people came over and said, we're so glad you're here. And Harper hearing that, I mean, what more can you ask for, right? 2 weeks later, a woman, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember who it is. So if you're in here, I'm very sorry, came up to me out in the hallway and she goes, your son a few weeks ago. And I'm like, oh no, that's going to change. She goes, I was so glad to hear what he was saying. And I'm thinking, okay, oh, tell me more about that. She goes, he didn't want to leave. He wanted to be in there. I just love that this is a place he wants to be. And I said to her, I am so grateful you said that because that is not the perspective that I had on that day. And I'm just really grateful for that because you're right. He wanted to be in there. He did not want to leave. It was communion that Sunday. He loves communion. He calls it the bread day. And he was real mad about being out. And I just thought, oh my goodness, this is a very beautiful, special place. And so for our family, we really do all belong here. We felt that it's been life-changing for us. And so I just want to say, for one, if you don't walk away with anything else today, thank you for being a place of belonging for our family, especially for my little guy, because he's one special kid. And I'm just so grateful for that. Along with that, my hope is this is a starting point, right? We can celebrate the things that are going well here. We can think about things that maybe we might do a little differently that would increase belonging for all individuals with varying needs. There's a whole other 3-hour conversation we could have about how exactly to do that. The quick version, and then I'm done, and I will stay around for questions if you want to talk, because I know we're out of time. The quick version of that is perspective. The puzzle piece perspective is step one. The second is participation. There's a thing called universal design for worship, which is some things we can put in place in our worship settings that everyone benefits from, i.e. stand in body or in spirit, which I actually heard Reagan say this morning, and we've never talked about that. So that's sort of universal things we can have in place that benefit all people. And maybe it would come to our awareness because of individuals with disabilities. And then there's personalization, knowing individuals specifically, helping them belong, but also knowing what can we put in place to support them? What things might they need to fully access their greens in this setting and in this community? So I haven't been asked to do another Sunday school, but I hope maybe we can talk about that another time. So I just want to say thank you. I hope that you can walk away today with a deeper understanding of what belonging is. And that's all I have to say today.
I love this church from many years, but I've never loved anyone than today. Thank you very much for what you've done. I don't think this light is on. Okay. I would like to close in prayer for those of us that are here. God, you have taught us by your example of including paralytics, lepers, and others cast aside by society. This morning, you have made us mindful of the needs of others as we have listened and learned from Janelle's experience and expertise. Help us to welcome others as your children with special needs. Open our ears and hearts in order to leave this place more understanding and inclusive as a result of Janelle's presentation. We pray all this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Prayers for you.
Yeah.